This is shocking. The ATF, a federal agency funded by your tax dollars, went on social media and told the entire nation many people attempt to conceal firearms on their person or belongings, which puts everyone involved at risk. Not criminals, not gang members, not cartel smugglers, just many people. That means you. That means me. That means millions of law-abiding citizens who went through the background checks, bought the permits, and carry responsibly every single day. Overnight, the ATF essentially labeled America's concealed carriers as a public danger. The moment this tweet went live, it was like an earthquake in the Second Amendment community. It wasn't just bad wording. It was a revelation, a mask ripped off. ATF showed the world exactly how they view us, not as responsible citizens exercising a constitutional right, but as a threat that must be managed. And let me be clear, when the government frames ordinary Americans as the problem that opens the door to harassment restrictions and eventually outright confiscation, the backlash was immediate, loud, and relentless. AmmoLand News hit back with facts. Concealed carry is not the issue, ATF is. Millions of Americans carry concealed without incident, and lives are saved because of it. Mark W. Smith, a constitutional attorney, hammered the point that ATF might need a refresher on the Supreme Court's own rulings, Heller, McDonald, Bruen. Those cases established in the strongest terms in history that Americans have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. How can an agency contradict the highest court in the land unless deep down it doesn't respect those decisions at all? Gun owners of America didn't hold back either, telling ATF to try reading Heller, McDonald, Bruen and the Second Amendment again, tyrants. Firearms Policy Coalition unleashed pure fire with sarcasm. Your existence puts everyone at risk. Amorite, that tweet went viral, not only because it was hilarious, but because it captured exactly how many feel about ATF. This is an agency that too often sees the American people as the enemy. And it wasn't just the big names reacting. Across our 15.com, Reddit's, our CCW YouTube gun channels, and every corner of the gun community, outrage exploded. Ordinary people, moms and dads who carry to protect their kids, veterans who carry to protect their communities, all said the same thing. This is unacceptable. Comments poured in like, "So my Glock 19 makes me more dangerous than the guy who robbed the store last week." That's how you know this tweet hit a nerve. It insulted the very core of why people carry. Now here's the unbelievable part. ATF didn't walk it back immediately. They didn't say sorry, poor wording. No, they left it up for over 27 hours. More than a full day, where the official stance of a federal agency was that concealed carriers equal danger. Only after nearly 28 hours of nonstop public outrage did they quietly adjust the post. Suddenly, many people became many criminals. One word completely changed the meaning. But the damage was already done. If criminals were the target, why wasn't that the wording from the beginning? Why let the entire country believe that concealed carriers were a risk to everyone around them? The answer is chilling, because in the culture of the ATF, that's exactly how they see us. This was not a typo. This was not an intern mistake. This was a glimpse into the institutional mindset of an agency that for decades has blurred the line between criminals and law-abiding citizens when it comes to firearms. That's why the outrage was so fierce and so justified. Concealed carriers understand what's at stake. The Second Amendment is not abstract. It's the reason a young mother can defend herself in a parking lot, the reason a veteran can stop a mall shooter before he takes more lives, the reason families across this country sleep in peace at night. To smear all of that as a risk is not just insulting, it's dangerous. And let's be real, if Americans hadn't raised hell about that tweet, it would still be up today. ATF didn't regret the message, they regretted getting caught. The reason this tweet cuts so deep isn't just because of one sloppy sentence. It's because concealed carriers have seen this movie before. Every time a government agency gets caught treating law-abiding gun owners as if they're criminals, they claim it's just a mistake, just poor wording, just a misunderstanding. But we know better. This is a pattern, and history proves it. Let's start with the recent names you probably haven't heard on the evening news. Patrick Tate, Adamiak, Mark Chapa Manley, Russell Fincher, Brian Malinowski. These weren't cartel bosses or gang leaders. They were ordinary Americans who suddenly found themselves targeted by ATF. Adamiak's life was turned upside down by raids and charges. Manley faced intense scrutiny that nearly ruined him. Fincher, a minister, was arrested in front of his own children. And Brian Malinowski, he was killed during an ATF raid in Arkansas earlier this year. That's right, a man is dead, not because he was a violent criminal, but because an agency decided to treat his gun sales as suspicious. These are real families, real lives, shattered by an agency that claims to be protecting the public. And when you zoom out, the picture gets even darker. This isn't just about one tweet or one raid. Go back to Ruby Ridge in 1992. Federal agents laid siege to Randy Weaver's cabin in Idaho. The result? His wife and 14-year-old son were killed.
Randy Weaver brought his family to the top of this mountain 9 years ago because he wanted to be left alone. Now a force of 200 police, federal agents, and the National Guard have surrounded the house. Weaver is wanted on charges of selling 2 illegal sawed-off shotguns to a federal informer. When authorities went to Weaver's house last week to arrest him, a U.S. Marshal and Weaver's 13-year-old son were killed in a brief shootout. The FBI says they will not leave until Weaver and his friend Kevin Harris, who lives with him, are in custody.
Then Waco. In 1993, 76 men, women, and children died in a fiery inferno after ATF and FBI launched their infamous raid on the Branch Davidians. These names are burned into American history as examples of what happens when federal agencies view citizens as enemies. And here's the kicker. Those disasters didn't teach restraint. If anything, they set the tone for the decades to come. So when ATF tweets that many people who conceal carry put everyone at risk, concealed carriers don't see it as a mistake. They see it as confirmation. Confirmation that the same mindset that led to Ruby Ridge and Waco is alive and well today. A mindset that doesn't distinguish between criminals and citizens. A mindset that sees the mere act of owning or carrying a firearm as inherently suspicious. This is why the community erupted with such fury. It wasn't paranoia, it was an experience. They know that once a government agency paints gun owners as dangerous, bad things follow. Raids, arrests, families destroyed, rights trampled. And the sad truth is, if history is any indication, the ATF will keep doing it until enough Americans stand up and say no more. Let's not forget, this is the same ATF that has repeatedly shifted definitions and rules without congressional approval. One day, pistol braces are legal. The next day, they're felonies. One day, a piece of metal is just a gun part. The next day, it's a machine gun. These aren't minor technicalities. These are decisions that can turn law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight with the stroke of a pen. And when you pair that with a public statement smearing millions of carriers as a risk, the message is crystal clear in the eyes of ATF. We're all suspects. Think about that. The mother who carries a revolver in her purse so she can walk safely to her car. The father who keeps a concealed pistol while taking his kids to the park. The veteran who carries because he's seen firsthand how evil can strike in an instant. These people are not risks. They are the strongest line of defense against crime in their communities. Yet ATF chose to lump them together with the very criminals they're supposed to stop. That's not just insulting, it's dangerous, and it fundamentally erodes trust between the people and the government. And let's be clear, trust is already hanging by a thread. Gun owners didn't invent the mistrust of ATF. ATF earned it through decades of overreach, botched operations, and blatant hostility toward the very citizens they are meant to serve. This tweet was not a random PR mistake. It was a reminder. A reminder that when it comes to firearms, the default position of ATF is suspicion. And suspicion, when weaponized by the government, leads to tragedies that history will never forget. So, yes, the outrage was justified. It was inevitable. Because every concealed carrier knows in their bones that if we let statements like this slide, the next Ruby Ridge, the next Waco, the next Malinowski could be just around the corner. And that is not paranoia. That is reality. Here's the part the national media rarely shows reality. Concealed carry is not a theoretical talking point. It is a daily safeguard used by ordinary Americans who refuse to be victims. That truth undercuts the narrative behind the ATF statement. If carrying were the threat, countless towns and workplaces would be war zones. They are not. In city after city, quiet carriers help deter, interrupt, or stop evil. A review of the best available research makes something crystal clear. The Rand Corporation's gun policy summaries do not prove that concealed carry causes crime to rise or fall in a consistent, universal way. The Centers for Disease Control has acknowledged credible estimates of defensive gun use, ranging from the hundreds of thousands to several million incidents per year, most resolved without a shot fired. No honest reading of those findings supports the claim that ordinary carriers put everyone at risk. More than half the states now recognize permitless carry for eligible law-abiding adults. Citizens are not turning into criminals. Criminals are, as always, the problem. Consider Greenwood Park Mall in Indiana 2022. A murderer opened fire intent on mass slaughter. Within seconds, a young man carrying legally engaged closed distance and ended the attack with extraordinary accuracy. Police praised his actions, and investigators confirmed how quickly he neutralized the threat. Shoppers lived because a citizen was ready. No bureaucracy saved anyone that day. Skill, courage, and a concealed pistol did. Look at Charleston, West Virginia that same year. A man pulled a rifle and began shooting into a crowd. A woman lawfully carrying Drew returned fire and stopped him immediately. She did not wait for permission or for a press release. She acted, and dozens of families went home instead of to funerals. Stories like these should lead every nightly broadcast. Instead, they vanish in days while failed policies get recycled for years. Media asymmetry matters. When a criminal abuses a gun, headlines scream for weeks. When a citizen stops a killer, the story is minimized, the hero anonymized, and the lesson ignored. That distortion feeds the false premise behind the ATF framing. The phrase, "many people," blurs the crucial line between predators and protectors, between those who carry to harm and those who carry to shield. Language like that becomes policy, and policy becomes raids, arrests, and ruined lives. There is a better path that starts with telling the truth. Ordinary carriers are neighbors, parents, nurses, truckers, veterans, and small business owners. They train, they follow the law, and they go to extreme lengths to avoid conflict. When violence finds them anyway, they end it faster than a dispatcher can type an address. Communities thrive when the capable refuse to be helpless, and when the state respects that reality. Here is the call to action. Support the groups that fight daily in the courts and legislatures: ATF, GOA, and FPC. Contact state lawmakers and demand statutes that protect, carry, punish criminals, and forbid agencies from smearing citizens by decree. Document responsible defensive uses and share them. Seek reputable training, maintain clean gear, and keep records. Be the example: calm, disciplined, accurate, and lawful. Build a local culture that values competence over slogans. If this breakdown has value, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with a friend who needs clarity. The next time a blue check account claims that many people who carry are a danger, point them to the evidence: the lives saved and the families intact. Concealed carry does not make America dangerous. It makes Americans harder to kill. That is the line, and it will not move, not today or ever.